All right, so we are live here with Darin Starr. We're super excited to have him here, and we'll kind of have some questions. If you have any questions at any time, you can either put them in the chat or unmute yourself as we kind of go through. But we're going to kind of chat a lot about, competing, the beginning stages to post-show, anything in between. So if you have any questions, feel free to hop in. So Darin, kind of share a little bit about yourself for anyone who doesn't know who you are.
Yeah, I have a question first of all. Should I see that chat or is that going to you?
You should be able to see it as well.
How do I turn that on?
Are you on your computer?
Yeah. Oh, is this, there we go. Okay. In-call messages?
Yes.
Is that what it is? Okay. Yep. All right, cool. All right. Little about me. Well, I've been a full-time online coach for now 15 years. It's what I do. I also play guitar badly, and piano. So I'm a musician, but that's just an amateur thing. I always say like bodybuilding is actually, for me, it's how I make money, and music recording is how I spend it. And I also have a videography business, which is why I'm actually well lit here. So it's just, got to represent the brand. But I've been in bodybuilding since early 2000s, a trainer before then, got into coaching. As a trainer, I just noticed that I wasn't really working with the kind of population that I really wanted to find. I was living in Asheville, North Carolina at the time, which is a hippie/retiree town. And not really a lot of competitors there. So I got into the online space, grew my business there, and moved to Knoxville and stopped training in person completely. And so 15 years later, here we are. So it's my full-time job, keeps me super busy, keeps me out of trouble, and allows me to kind of stay fresh as I also pursue my own competitive endeavors. And I took, I competed, made several early attempts to compete around 2009, 2010, finally did it, and then, stopped competing in 2012 and took a 9-year break while I was still doing all the stuff on a daily basis. I just didn't want to go through show day. Like we were talking about before, the show day experience can be a real pain. I am not a social creature, so I don't like the crowds. I don't like, the whole thing about meeting new people. I'm like, that's stressful and anxiety provoking for me. So I just decided I wasn't going to compete. And then eventually the bug kind of hit me, and it's like, for a business reason, at least, I probably should. So in 2021, I went back and I did it. And now I'm 7.5 weeks out from my next one here. But I'm definitely not one of those 3 or 4 shows a year kind of people. I'm like, do one, make it good, get out. So, but it's not one size fits all. Some people want to do several. Some people kind of want to be in prep throughout the whole year. And oftentimes I have to talk some of my clients out of doing that. Like, no, you need time not being in a deficit. So it's a tricky balance trying to find the right mix for everybody, but you always have to coach each person as an individual. And sometimes you get kind of stuck in your own ways, and you always need to identify that and be like, nope. This might be what I typically like to do, but it doesn't mean it's the right thing for everybody. So keep an open mind.
Yeah, I agree with that. Everyone's a little bit different, and especially if they're new to bodybuilding, it can be, they see what other people are doing and they kind of want to do either the same thing or, preface off of the other person's experience for their own experience. You know what I mean? But their body may not respond the same way.
And the challenge also is, people are watching other people's experience, but they're seeing what that other person wants to show them of that experience. And there's a lot of people who do not put their off season out there because they don't like their off season body. And so it looks like they never have one. They're like, this person's ripped all year around. How is it? It's like, no, those are the same photos they were posting from 6 months ago. And that's not how they are all the time. And they just kind of go into hibernation during their off season. And then magically, once prep rolls around, they start getting lean again, then new photos start appearing. And it's just, you got to watch out for that. And so I always encourage people to, if you're going to follow people on social media, follow the people who are transparent about it, just because they give you a more representative picture of what it should really be like, or at least understand what you're not seeing.
Right. No, I agree with that too, because a lot of the times you do see people fall off and you're like, where have you been? And then all of a sudden, oh, I'm in prep 20 weeks out. Like, what? Where have you
been? or they disappear until they're 8 weeks out because they weren't happy with how they looked, and they're like, okay, now I look presentable again. I will put myself back out there in public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understandable.
I'm kind of guilty of that too.
Hey, it happens. What show are you doing here in 7.5 weeks?
Battle of the River in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
And what division? I don't think I ever asked you.
Classic physique.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and this will be like open sea probably. You know, I had a traumatic experience because for my entire adult life, I've always said like, oh, I'm 6 foot. Well, in classic physique, you have a weight cap based on your height, and there's an 8 or a 9 pound difference between every inch. And so if you don't have that exactly correct, you could find yourself really screwed on show day. And so at the start of my prep, I'm like, okay, I got to measure myself for sure, just so I know, because if I'm a 1/4 inch off or anything like that, I'm going to be in a world of hurt. I measured myself at 5'10 3/4, and it was the most devastating day of my life. Like I'd lost 1 1/4 inch over what I thought I had. And it also meant that I had to cut down that much further. So,
Oh, no.
but it's better to know than to be surprised. You know, I've had clients in the past who would swear to me up and down, I'm 5'7", I'm 5'7", I'm 5'7", and then they get weighed in, and it's like, no, you're 5'6" and 7/8. I had one guy 5'6" and 7. It was 1/8 of an inch off, and he had to go sweat off 9 pounds to do the show, which is just miserable. And I'm like, I wanted to tell him, like, just slip the guy a 50 or something like that. Like, you've got to be able to bribe 1/8 of an inch out of somebody, right? I mean, come on. But no, he didn't want to do that. That's the route I would have taken personally. Maybe not the most ethical thing, but I don't want to sweat off 9 pounds and kill myself in the process either. So.
Yeah, no. And I think that brings up a good point is like, what are some things, at least for you as a coach, that you would say you would completely avoid when it comes to prepping for a show for like clients in particular?
Things that I would avoid. Well, the first thing is I have had some clients who want to get away with banned substances in a drug tested show, and nothing super egregious, but like it's still on the banned substance list, and it ain't going to happen, dude. And I've fired clients over that before, and I have emailed promoters to let them know, like, this guy's planning on doing your show, test him. Yeah. Like, this is not cool. And here's the conversation we had, just because like there's a place for those people to compete, and a drug tested show is not that place. And so, like, I feel very adamant about that. Even for people who are doing an untested show, like diuretics are off the table. So there's a lot to manage on that, and I'm comfortable managing that. The issue is they pretty much always make you look worse. So why would you do it? You don't need it. And the rest of prep is really just about, like, you know, trying to. It's really a math game, and you want to make sure that the math makes sense before you start. If you know that you need to get to a certain stage weight, and this is really more applicable for people who have competed before, and they'll be like, I've competed before and I was 114 pounds on stage. My off season now I'm at 130. I know I can get this kind of rate of loss, so let's compete in 8 weeks. Ooh, I don't like that math. That's a pretty hefty percentage of your body weight per week. So it's really about making sure your timeline is set from the beginning. And if you do that, it's pretty easy to avoid a lot of stupid stuff. I know a lot of people are like, oh, your calories are too low, et cetera. And the simple fact of the matter is, like, some people, you really just have to push them, and you have to drop their calories low, and you have to do a lot of cardio in order to get them stage lean. And a lot of people don't want to do that, and those people don't end up getting stage lean. And that's okay. Like, everybody needs to draw their line at what they're comfortable with. I've drawn that line for myself as well, as far as what I do and don't want to do, like how aggressive I want to get with my deficit, just because I want to be able to survive on a day-to-day basis. But some people, they're like, that's what they take and they're in it. I'm like, okay, cool. Now we're going to need to be careful with how you treat yourself after the show, because you can't, you know, survive on 1,050 calories a day and do 2 hours of cardio a day and then just stop all that after the show, or you're going to have the worst time of your life. So it's about kind of thinking longer. Like, yes, we have 8 weeks until the show is here, but we need to be thinking about like the next 14 weeks, you know, the 4 to 8 week period after the show too.
Yeah. And I've had clients like that too, who are like, they're ready to just drop, you know, a coach right after their show. And it's like, okay, no, like these are the reasons why, you know, because the post-show period, getting back to your maintenance can be hell if you don't have a plan in place.
Yeah. And you know, it's super common. I've had plenty of clients before who, once the show comes and goes, are like, thanks, that was awesome, I'll see you later. I'm like, this is not really the best way to do it. And so I always tell people that beforehand. Oftentimes it's just a budget issue. I get that. Like, I can afford to coach for prep. I can't afford to coach year round. That's it. I get that. But there should be a plan in place. The problem is, a lot of people will be like, hey, I can't afford you after the show. What should I do for the next couple months? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, I can tell you what I'd have you do the first week or two, But then what happens beyond that depends on how well you do that stuff and how your body responds to it. And a lot of people think that I've got some kind of crystal ball, and like, I feel like I'm pretty good at what I do, but I can't predict the future. And you certainly when you throw a human into the mix as well, a human that, coming out of the show might decide that they just want to eat nothing but donuts and cheeseburgers for a week. It's like, you can't really program that. So yeah, Holly, you're nodding your head. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and you can't predict anything because you don't know how you're going to feel after the show, whether or not you want to compete again. Half the time, if it's a first-time competitor, you may not know. I didn't know at the beginning if I wanted to compete again. But then, of course, I didn't have a plan in place either. So I've been right there. I've been right there.
Well, yeah, and the show that I did in 2021, my plan was, I had a very tentative plan. Like, hey, if I happen to get a national qualification, nationals is a couple of weeks after that, I'll go do it. I'll totally get my ass kicked there, absolutely, but it'll be a good experience, and I can at least say that I did it and dip my toes in that water. But by the time that show came around, I didn't qualify. But even if I did, it'd be like, F that. No, I'm done. I'm out. Like, that prep sucked. I didn't want to extend it for another 2 to 3 weeks. So
right.
you always think what's going to be a good idea. It's like, oh, I'm going to do this show, and then I'd like to plan for this one and this one after that. Let's do the first one first, especially if it's your first season, because prep is always a different experience than what you expect it to be.
Yeah. And how would you say your preps have changed over time of all the preps that you've done leading up to now?
Yeah, they've gotten smarter to some extent. I've always had a coach myself, which, part of it is being a coach. I know the value that a good one brings. And also, I do not want to be my own worst client, which I have always thought that I would be, and now I'm proving that to be true. So in the past, it's been more of a traditional, like, oh, we're going to just push really hard. Oh, I feel I'm out of it. Oh, well, let's do a cheat meal, kind of bring you back up a little bit and blah, blah. And it's inconsistent. You never get lean enough that way. It's frustrating. I've always followed a higher volume training approach. And right now it's like, I'm 47, I'm not getting any younger. I'm not getting any fresher. And my motor isn't revving any hotter than it was when I was in my 20s or 30s. Like, I'm losing steam. Okay, I feel that. So this prep now, I was working with a coach last year, and in December, actually, she passed away. And so now I kind of decided, like, okay, well, I'm going to continue with this prep. I'm going to do it on my own, because we put in some really good work in the off season. And so I'm going to see it through. I know what to do. I'm going to coach myself. I'm going to be my own giant pain in the ass of a client and see if we can make it work. So what I've done this time around is really modulate my training volume. So I do maximum 4 exercises on a day, probably 3 working sets per exercise. So it's really in that 12 to 15 set per session range. There's a couple days where I do a couple of muscle groups, but they're less fatiguing, generally like chest and shoulders I put together. So still like 16 good working sets per session. If I'm really quick, I can get through that in 45, 55 minutes. And I've kept my calories a little bit higher. I've decided to keep my cardio significantly higher. So I'm doing 90 minutes a day. And I started doing 90 minutes a day when I was 22 weeks out. But it's really like 2 30-minute walks with my dog. He's the main beneficiary of that. And then a good 30 minutes of, kind of just huff and puff, sweat it out a little bit on the elliptical post-workout. So it's pretty low intensity, but 90 minutes still. But keeping my calories up higher, and I haven't done any cheat meals for the whole prep. It's just been super consistent, and keeping my calories higher. I'm more well fed. I'm less food focused. And here I am at 8 weeks out. I just did a pretty significant macro cut this last Saturday. Today's a low carb day. I'm feeling it, but it's like, yeah, I can do this for 8 weeks. This is fine. So it's been smoother this time around, just because my training volume is lower. I'm taking more rest days. I'm prioritizing sleep, prioritizing recovery, keeping myself busy, which allows me to be less focused on food that I want to eat that I can't. Like this package of Oreos that's sitting over here that I can see from where I sit. They've been there for 18 weeks and I haven't touched them. So I mean, at this point, I know they're stale, so I'm not really too worried about it. But it's a lot easier when you're just kind of dialed in and you know what the goal is, and you're not doing stupid stuff, and you're just taking a little bit more of an even keeled approach and prioritizing the little things like stress management, rest, recovery, take your days off, don't overtrain, don't overdo it on the deficit, avoid the cheat meal if you can. Like I've done like a couple of small refeeds and that's been about it. So just trying to be smarter about it.
Awesome. And Stephanie actually has a question for you. How do you balance the demands of competition preparation with your clients' personal and professional lives?
Yeah. So it's pretty easy actually. The biggest thing that I have to do is not carry around my client's stress with me. Like that's theirs to carry. And as a coach, you know, people, and the thing is, like, in order to be a good coach, I have to know what's stressing them out, because I'm like, whatever it is, like, we got to solve that. So one of the things I have all my clients for part of the qualitative part of their check-in, there's a form on my website. They fill it out every week. I want them to tell me about their best and worst workouts. How's their energy doing? Give me some examples for numbers you're hitting on progressive overload. How's your appetite? How's digestion? How are you sleeping? What's stressing you out? And then and oftentimes it's like, this prep is what's stressing me out. Like, I can't help you there. I'm only going to make that problem worse. I'm sorry, but be okay with it. But if it's something else, like, oh, my family is doing this, we'll talk to them, go address that and fix that. And then that can't be my problem. Or, and it's just really easy, like, especially with my personality type, like I want to solve all the problems. And I just have to recognize, like, there's some things that's just not my burden to carry. And if somebody's struggling with their prep, I got to help them with that. And I got to help them manage that and try to make it easier if I can. But at the same time, while I am kind of causing that problem, because I'm the one that created their plan, like, I want to try and fix it and smooth it out as much as I can. And that's where my responsibility ends. It's like, yeah, it's hard. I know it is. I do it too. Manage it. And have the conversation with me, absolutely, but I always tell my clients also, do not be a prep martyr. Like, it's your problem. Don't make it a problem for the other people around you. Tell me about it. Don't make it a problem for your family, for your coworkers, or anything like that. Other than that, I just manage a very, very detailed and rigorous schedule. Like, hour by hour, everything that I do is scheduled out on my calendar. So like my training session, my own personal training session, is on the calendar. It includes my commute time to the gym and back. If I have to go to the grocery store, I tack on 30 minutes onto that. So I always know, like, okay, I have a block here to do client check-ins. I have a block here for training. Here's a gap. That's where I eat. Here's another block of client check-ins. This is where I do some video production work, blah, 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 blah. So everything is just, it's all plugged in advance on my calendar, and all I do is just sit here like an idiot and follow my calendar all day. So it's pretty easy.
Well, hey, it makes your schedule a lot easier because you're like, I know exactly what I'm doing, right?
Yeah, I'm like Ron Burgundy with the teleprompter. If it's in there, I'm going to read it. And if it's on my calendar, I'm just going to do it. So as long as I get that set up in a way that's manageable, and if I don't leave myself any breaks, I'll recognize that hopefully before the week starts and be like, oh, that's an impossible schedule. You should fix that, moron. And then I fix it. So.
Yeah. And I like what you brought up about, talking to your family about anything that's stressing you out with your prep, helping your family to understand, like, kind of what your schedule is. I feel like some clients don't tend to talk to their family about exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm. And their family doesn't understand prep unless they've been through a prep. You know what I mean? So bringing your family on, helping them to understand, like, kind of what you need to do in that time is very beneficial.
Yeah, and for clients that I have, and I've worked with, this group is very relevant because I work with a ton of first-time competitors and a lot of people who are just like looking ahead to their first show, which might be a year or two away. And for somebody who is in a novice space like that and hasn't been through it before, they don't know what to expect, and their family has no idea what's about to happen.
Right.
Like, this person's about to turn into a food deprived demon. So just watch out. This might not be fun. But I always tell people, like, here's, I can't tell you how your prep is going to go. Here's what I can tell you are some general things to expect. And the general advice that I give people is, like, make sure your family's supportive. They don't need to understand the whole thing, but make sure they're supportive. Ask them for a little bit of patience from you, but also be present for them. Like, do this, but don't make this the only thing you do. Don't be absent from the other stuff that you have to do. Don't say no to every single social function. It's your responsibility to continue your life as though you're not in prep, and just to have the discipline to put yourself in situations where you'll have to say no to some things. And I think if you can do that and you can balance that, like, I've done that before. During this prep, I've had several social functions where I've gone out and just like, no thanks, I'm not going to eat. Why aren't you going to eat? Well, it's my diet. You wouldn't understand, that whole meme. Like, but which always sparks questions. People are curious. You've had those conversations with people, of course, too. But yeah, I'm just gonna sit here, sip on my Diet Coke. I'm fine. I'm happy. Yeah, I'm gonna go home in a little bit and eat my meal, eat my ground turkey and my rice, etc. So yeah.
Understandable. Stephanie also has another question here.
Yeah.
What strategies do you employ to ensure your clients maintain motivation and focus throughout their prep?
Yeah. So I always ask people, like, remember why you're doing this. Like, what was the thing that first made you want to compete? What was the first thing that put bodybuilding into your mind and kind of planted that seed that why you wanted to do this? Because that might have been a year ago, and then 10 weeks ago you decided you wanted to do this show. Remember back to why you first got interested in it, because there are going to be times where you got to dig deep for that little nugget, and it might be hard to find. It might be buried under 10 to 12 inches of dirt, but it's down there somewhere. But you have to remember it. And when you're deep in prep, it can be hard to find it. But motivation is a fickle thing. And so it is always going to wax and wane during prep. 2 weeks ago, so I do a weekly vlog that I put up on YouTube that kind of outlines my whole prep adventure for the week. And for my 9-week out update, which I posted last week, it was like, well, I might pull the plug on this prep. Like, I feel like ass. I hate it. When I look at myself, I'm just disappointed in everything that I see. And honestly, like, I don't want to continue with this prep if that's what's going to end up going up on stage. And so, I put that out there. It's true. And also, like, I think most people feel that way at some point during prep. And I think it's okay to just be honest with that and throw it out there. And 5 days after posting that went up on Monday. So then Saturday, 5-6 days later, I was in the gym following my regular high carb day, and I saw some stuff. I'm like, whoa, okay, I haven't seen that on me before. That's interesting. And those are the moments that you kind of live for. And a lot of people, they aren't looking for those. And you've got to, like, keep your eyes attuned for that. It's not like, am I going to be the best looking person up on stage? But it's like, am I seeing something here that I haven't seen before? And you kind of grab onto that and take it and carry it with you and stick it in your brain and keep it there. And so that can help with motivation, but discipline will carry you through those gaps in the motivation. Like, when I wanted to just pull the plug on prep, I still followed my plan the whole time, because I'm like, I got to give myself wiggle room in case I change my mind. And clearly, like, I don't know what it was. If it was some kind of a hormonal shift, I was having a bad day. Part of it was I had just done my taxes 2 days before, so I was just in a foul mood from that. And so that kind of drags you down a little bit. So just general life stuff can get in the way and impact how you feel about stuff. And yeah, and then after that, it's like, yeah, and now I'm much more confident. Like, last week, I was like, no, this isn't going to happen. Now I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is going to happen, and I'm going to feel pretty good about it. So you just got to ride the wave.
Yeah, we're our own worst critics when it comes to prep. We see ourselves every day. It doesn't matter. And we're going to pick ourselves apart.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Elizabeth has a question for you as well.
Yeah.
Recommendations for going on a week vacation 2 weeks prior to hitting the stage she does not drink.
Yeah, don't go on vacation. Sorry, Elizabeth. I mean, it's that is always the best strategy. Like, at 2 weeks out, that's when you want everything to be as consistent as possible. So I'll give you 2 examples here from clients that I worked with just in the past couple of months. One of them, his wife was having a 40th birthday, and so scheduled a trip to, what was it? Was it Brazil or Peru? I don't remember. When he was going to be 17 days out, and he was going to come back when he was about 8 days out. And I'm like, dude, this is a terrible idea. And he's like, I know, but I can't say no to this trip. Like, it's her 40th birthday party. I will be crucified if I don't go. I'm like, I get it. So I'm like, it's far from what you want to do. But, and the other trick here was, he'd never been there before. He didn't know where they were staying, what the accommodations were. He didn't know what his access to food was going to be like. He didn't know if there was a gym or anything like that. And basically, he eyeballed his food for a week. He didn't work out, other than, like, he did some push-ups and some body weight squats and stuff like that. And, like, he took some bands with him so he could, like, get a little bit of muscle stimulus, fairly worthless though it was. And the thing is, like, he was ahead enough in his prep that while it was far from ideal, he did okay. He did okay, and he survived and made it through. And we just had to, like, like the second your plane lands and you get back home, take some photos, and the next morning grab a weigh-in. Let's see where we're at, and we're going to micromanage this day by day from there. And that's what you have to do if you're on like a weekly check-in process with your coach. Following something like that, you need to be checking in daily, just to make sure that everything is kind of returning back to the norm. And of course, if you can keep yourself a little bit more on plan throughout, like if you've got gym access, if you've got the ability to meal prep, take some food with you, even if it's just some non-perishables to kind of fill in the gap, that's going to help tremendously. The other example was somebody who took a vacation, which was not planned at the start of her prep, when she was 4 weeks out, and it was 2 weeks in Hawaii. And it was going to be a hiking trip where, food access was going to be kind of limited, et cetera. And she was still going to be able to hit the gym. And she came back from that trip and she was like, yeah, so I just decided I was going to do whatever I wanted to when I was there, and I'm not going to do the show. So, and I quit bodybuilding. So I just don't want to do this anymore. So you never know. You never know how somebody's going to respond to a situation like that. And also, like, that prep was her first experience. Like, when she started bodybuilding, she just went straight into a pre-contest cut. She never experienced an off season. So she's like, bodybuilding sucks. I'm like, you haven't even experienced the whole thing yet. But clearly, like, I'm not going to twist somebody's arm if they don't think it's for them. But I think with a little bit of planning, and so depending on where you're going, like, call ahead to determine your accommodations as best you can, where you're staying, what kind of facilities you're going to have access to, if you're going to have access to a full kitchen, or if you can pack a hot plate to do some meal prep, if you've got access to a fridge, microwave, is there a gym on site or something nearby? If you're staying in a hotel, ask someone on staff if they can send you some pictures of what the fitness facility looks like, because if it's a treadmill and a single 12-pound dumbbell, that's not going to do the trick. So then, do you have access? Like, can you get out to get a day pass at another gym nearby? If this is even in the States or if it's international or whatever. So a lot of things that you can do. And clearly, like, you don't drink, that's great. So keep it alcohol free. And the closer you can keep to the script, the better off you're going to be. Yeah, great question, by the way.
Definitely plan ahead as much as you can. I tell clients that all the time. Like, if you're planning on doing anything, even if you're not 2 weeks out, like any vacations, any get-togethers, celebrations, things like that, plan ahead as much as you can within that time.
Totally. And also, like, the reason I'm doing this show, it's on June 8th. My wife is a teacher and she has summers off. So her last week of school, she's out of school at the end of May. And so then my show is like 10 days later. And then we've got the summer to do whatever. So, and the show that I did in 2021 was in November. So we had the whole summer, and then prep started when she went back to school. So for me, that's like the first priority in picking a show is kind of scheduling around her summer break, because not like we do a ton of traveling, but if we do, that's when it's going to be. And so I don't want to, last thing I want to do is take a trip like that when I'm in prep. It's just not going to be fun. Like, when I go on vacation, I'm taking nothing bodybuilding related with me. I'm not going to the gym. I'm not following a diet. I'm like, screw all that. Like, because part of it also is like, it's my job. And like, I want to take a break from my job for a week if I can. So I'm a little hardcore on that. Like, no, I'm an absolute believer in vacations and like taking a real vacation away from everything, but not when you're 2 weeks out.
Right. Awesome. And I guess my other question to you is, what has been the most difficult part of, what has been your most difficult client, I guess, is what my question is.
Yeah. So there's probably 1 million people in this world named Kyle. So I have no problem identifying him as Kyle. We'll just call him that. It's the only time I have ever written a plan for somebody, gotten one email back from them, and fired them immediately and refunded what they paid me. Like, okay, based on that email, I am not dealing with any more of your bullshit ever. Oh my God. Like, I kind of just like balled up into this little thing of stress and rage at just reading this email. And I just wanted to grab the computer and scream, why did you hire a coach in the first place? Stephanie, you're laughing. You've had people like this. You've experienced this too. I can tell. Because it was just like the most nonsensical stuff. It's like, well, the calories that you have me at aren't my maintenance calories. So why are you doing this? Or, he sent me his diet. I'm like, yeah, maybe a pint of Halo Top at night isn't the best thing every night. So let's do something else. He's like, well, I'm not going to quit that. I'm not going to give that up. He's like, I'm training 6 days a week. You only gave me a plan for 5 days. I'm like, if you know what you want to do, don't hire a coach. Like, I always want people to, quote unquote, be coachable, which doesn't mean that you'll just blindly do whatever I say, but it means that you're open to changing things and open to trying things a different way. And when people aren't, and without good reason, it infuriates me, and it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up a little bit. And sometimes there's a good reason. Like, I have these 4 days when I can train. I can't do a 6-day rotation. Okay, that's fine. That's totally legit. Or I can't eat this because I'm allergic or I hate it. Like, I've had coaches write me meal plans that have fish before. I'm like, nope, I can't do that. I've done it before. I'm just a hard pass on the fish. No. I think that's all pretty reasonable. But stuff like, no, I'm not going to not eat ice cream every night, or I'm not going to shift my training rotation by 1 day, or I'm not going to change my caloric intake at all. Like, get out of here with that crap. I got zero patience for that. Did I mention at the onset that I've been doing this for 15 years full time? My patience for that kind of stuff goes down a little bit every year. So I still consider myself a pretty patient individual, but I got my limits.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, is like, they have to be open, be coachable, but of course, within reason, there are certain things, whether it's, your history medically, with a doctor, things like that, any allergies, obviously things are going to play into that. But being coachable overall with your plan and being flexible to a certain extent is definitely key.
Yeah, or being willing to do anything different than what you already were doing. I mean, the real question I had for him is like, why? Why did you reach out to me in the first place? Like, and the thing is, like, I feel like, and this was fairly recent. This was like October, November, something around there. This was a fairly recent story. Over the years, I've gotten a lot better at vetting clients and kind of weeding out people that I don't want to work with from the ones that I do, and being a little bit more selective. And I feel very lucky that in my business, I'm in a position where I can do that. I can be a little bit more selective with the people that I want to work with. And so I ask a lot of questions, and, I want to make sure that it sounds like they've got their head in the right spot, and it sounds like we're a good fit. And somehow that guy, he slipped through the cracks. I don't know how it happened.
It happens. It happens.
It does. My spidey sense was off for that day or something. I don't know.
Anyone else have any other questions they'd like to ask Darin?
Hi, Linda. I see you down there. You're quiet.
Well, awesome. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share, Darin, since you've been on here?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like self-promotion is a little too self-serving. I'm also like really bad at it. So
It's okay.
I've been fortunate enough to be fairly successful in my business while being still pretty awful at self-promotion. So you can always check out my website, 5starphysique.com, if you want to. I would honestly like it. I mean, my name is right there on screen. If you open up Spotify and search for my name and listen to some of the music that I put out, that'd be awesome. If I was going to promote anything, it would probably be that, to be honest with you. I just put out a new single on March 27th, actually. So you don't have to hear me sing. It's all instrumental. But for the 7 people on the planet that are fans of 10-minute long instrumental progressive rock, it's right up your alley. So all 10 people on the planet for whom that description fits.
Well, awesome. And then I guess my last question for you is, what number one piece of advice would you give someone who's competing for the first time?
Oh, man.
I know.
So I get one answer for this, or can I break it up into categories?
You can break it up if you'd like. We have time.
Okay. Let's do that. So I would say category number 1 would be before you start prep. And that would be spend some time doing 2 very important things, which is finding the right coach. No, I'm not going to tell you it's me. Maybe it is, but it could be Stephanie. It could be a lot of people, right? So find the right coach. Find somebody that you vibe with. So they have to have the technical knowledge to get you where you want to go. I think that there's a lot of coaches to choose from that fit that criteria. And I think just the personal connection that you have with a coach, like you've got to feel like they're invested in you. You've got to feel like you have a rapport with them. There has to be a level of trust there as well. I think that's super critical. Find the right coach and then work with that coach to plan when your show is going to be. If somebody comes to me and says, here's the show that I want to do, and I've already registered for it, even though it's 24 weeks out, it's like, I'm kind of hamstrung here because I might not think that's the right fit for you. And I might want to suggest something else, but if you've already committed to it, well, I guess we're committed to it. So we have less flexibility that way. And so work with your coach and give them the option to suggest something else, because they're the ones that have done this before. They'll give it to you straight and tell you if you need more time or maybe you need less time. Who knows? During prep, goes back to the answer that I had for Stephanie before, which is remember why you started. I find it helpful to have some kind of distinct memory or thing or thought or visual in your head that you can always refer back to, that kind of puts you back in that space of like why you decided to do this show or why you decided to do your first show. And so that could be something, it could be like an image that you have on a lock screen of your phone, something like that, like a picture of the first bodybuilder you ever saw, like that made you just be like, yes, that's it. That's what I want to do. It could be something tactile. So, like I have a lot of anxiety when I'm around people in crowds. And so one thing that I do to kind of help me calm down from that a little bit is I just keep something in my pocket that is comforting, that I can just like stick my hands in my pockets like, oh yeah. And so what it is it's not this exact one, but autofocus, maybe guitar pick. So, it just, it's something, it's got some texture to it and it's a comforting thing, and I can stick that in my pocket and it takes me to a comfortable place. And so it could be anything for somebody in prep, just something that you can associate with why you're doing this. And then let's fast forward to show day. Biggest piece of advice I have there is headphones backstage are forbidden, or should be. Because if you're wearing headphones, you're not paying attention to what's going on around you. And that is a huge, huge mistake. You always need to be aware of who's on stage, how much longer do you have. The show might move a lot slower or a lot faster than you think. And you always need to be aware of what's going on. And then post-show, two things. Enjoy yourself for a limited amount of time. And then go back to that whole, why did I start doing this thing? And think about some of the habits that you want to start dropping after your show, and use that to help you kind of keep them going. And I think what should really happen post-show is the specifics of your program should change, but your routine shouldn't. Like your routine might be, I'm going to wake up and do 45 minutes of cardio. Well, now you're going to wake up and do 15 minutes or 0 based on the needs of your plan or something like that. That's going to go away. And now it's like, well, normally I have meal 1 here. Well, you're still going to have meal 1 there. It's just going to look different, right? Hopefully it's going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit more caloric. So intake's going to go up. Your output's going to go down a little bit. Give yourself some time, but we want your training intensity to go up. We want your focus to remain high. And if you can do all those things, then you're setting yourself up for success. And also at that point, you're in probably like the top 4th or 5th percentile of competitors, because most people really, really struggle with that. And I've got a guy who competed last month and did really well in his first show. It was an OCB show in Wilmington, North Carolina. And he did great, looked awesome on stage, really happy with that. Very competitive classes. So he took like 3rd and 4th or something like that. And he had his meal out after the show, and then the next day, right back on it. And I was slow getting him his post-show macros. So he just went right back to his like 1 week out plan. He's like, well, I'm kind of hungry. You got any extra food for me? Like, yeah, I think we can manage that. So let me get off my ass and do it here. But some people are just like, they're wired that way. And for a week, it was like, man, I'm really thinking about food a lot. Did he deviate from his plan? No. I like, dude, kudos to you. Like, I have never been able to do that. But some people can. If you can't do that, don't beat yourself up over it. Like, try, give it a good attempt, but not everybody's built for that. So think that's about all I got.
Well, awesome. I'm glad that you answered that. And I like the different parts too, because it's not just, one section. There's a lot that goes into a prep, pre going through your prep, and then show day, and then post show it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different phases that go with that. But
I thought of one more thing, actually. I'm
okay.
terrible. You're never going to get me off here. I'm never going to shut up now. I've had a taste of hearing my own voice, and it's addictive. So, the other thing that I always tell people, and this is just kind of a general thing for like competitors in general and bodybuilders in general, and it's one of the reasons why can we read that? So it says Hypertrophy University. So, which is a course that I created. Here we go. Self-promotion, right? It's not available yet, but it's, I'm actually recording all the videos for it Thursday. But it exists because, there's this thing that I've noticed with competitors where they go and they do their workouts. And this is more for like beginning and novice competitors. They do their workouts, and then that's it. And they go, but they're not thinking really about how they're executing things. And so the course that I created is just trying to get people to think more deeply about their overall form, their approach to their workouts, strategically approaching your training sessions, thinking about progressive overload, thinking about smart exercise substitutions, thinking about stimulus to fatigue ratio. Is this a good exercise for you, or is there a variation of this that might be better? How do you auto-regulate your volume based on how you're performing and recovering or not? And, do you understand when you're doing a specific movement? Like, I see this all the time because I've looked at tens of thousands of form videos from clients over the years. Maybe not tens, maybe 10,000. Tens is little, that's no. People do a Romanian deadlift, right? And they do it, it looks fine, cool. How do you feel? What's going to give out on that first? Oh, my grip. Okay, well, let's add some straps in there. Okay, now how does it feel? It's hard. What's hard? What's working? Like, that's one of those exercises. It's really like the main one, I think, where people do it and it's hard, but they don't feel a connection with the muscles that are actually working. So you need to understand, like, okay, a Romanian deadlift, it's a hip flexion exercise. What happens in hip flexion and hip extension? Well, your glutes and hamstrings stretch out in the flexion portion of it, and then they contract back into a shortened position in the extension part of it. So you've got to know what that is. You've got to have some ability to connect with those articulations, feel the muscles doing what they're doing, and just deepen your connection with that. Focus on your mind-muscle connection. How do you improve your mind-muscle connection? How do you fix issues that you have with proprioception? So I always want everybody that I work with to think more and more and more about that, because doing the workouts is not enough unless you're just a rank beginner, at which point, just doing stuff, just going to the gym, just by walking into the gym, you can probably gain 5 pounds of muscle in a year, even if you're not really doing much of anything. But past that beginning stage, you've really got to have the intention, like Holly said, absolutely, to the movements and the understanding of what they're supposed to accomplish. And if you start that and you start that learning process from very early on, then that beginning time can be even more productive. Like, that's really when you're going to grow the most. And so if you can learn more in the earlier parts of your training career and then carry that with you, that's how you start to reach your potential faster than everybody else. So, okay, that was my final 8-minute spiel. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. It was all good information, great information. So if anyone wants to reach out to Darin or check out his stuff, they can reach you at what website again?
5star with 2 R's physique.com. FIVE starphysique.com.
Perfect. Well, it was great having you. I look forward to seeing you step on stage here in the next 7.5 weeks. You'll do great.
We'll see. We'll see. I still might pull the plug if I have to.
Nah, I think you're in it. You're in it.
I think so too.
Awesome. Well, it was great having you. Well, I've recorded this, so I'll get you the recording once it's uploaded, and then we'll talk to you later.
Awesome. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.